It's been a few weeks. Sorry about that. A lot of stuff's been going on, and I'll hit that at the end of the video here. I wanted to sort of tell you where we're at on this build, this archtop build, and go from there. Now, I made a lot of videos about making this form. Okay, so the form exists. It's our main tool for putting this whole thing together. We've got the template. It's also a primary tool for putting this together. Now we have to talk about what is our goal in making this guitar. Do I just want to make a knockoff of a cheap guitar? Not really. I want to make a decent instrument. There's no point in making a terrible instrument. So I'm an acoustic instrument maker. I make acoustic instruments. I decided long ago not to make electric guitars, although what I'm talking about copying is in fact an electric guitar. So it's designed after acoustic guitars, but it's not an acoustic guitar. So my purpose in doing this is to take the basic shape, the basic styling of this instrument and make a decent acoustic guitar out of it. So that's my main point. I will have one pickup, probably mounted to the end of the fretboard, similar to a Johnny Smith guitar, and probably have basically a volume, maybe a tone on the pickguard. Okay, I don't usually make guitars with pick guards, but I don't usually make, archtop guitars either, although I've made several. It's not my primary thing to do. Now, let me start out by just recommending this book to everyone who might be interested in making an archtop guitar. This is by far the best book I've seen on that subject. I have not actually used it to make an archtop guitar. It has nice pictures, and it's got, basically how you make a guitar in it. And it has some nice reference points in terms of thicknesses and various things. So while I might reference it occasionally, I've never referenced it before when making an archtop. So I don't know how much I will. I will note that, this is a template from that book, which I made into a template, and I have used this on previous archtop guitars. And I've used kind of a modified, scaled down D'Angelico guitar shape in the past. I don't like huge guitars. I don't make dreadnought guitars, and the D'Angelico design that I've used, well, it is a D'Angelico design overall in shape and whatnot. It's scaled down to a 16-inch waist, which actually it's like 16 and a half. And so I'm not doing a full 17 or 18-inch lower bout. That's just, it's unplayable to me. So since I am my own worst critic, I build to what I can play and what makes sense to me. Now, materials. The materials on the Joe Pass guitar that we're basically copying, or at least using as a base, I honestly don't know what the back and sides are made out of. It kind of looks like a flame maple, but it's not a maple. At least it's not a maple I'm familiar with, and I'm familiar with the European maples and several of the American maples. So I'm not familiar with the Asian varieties. It might be a maple, I don't know. It has a beautiful flame pattern. There are numbers of woods that have flaming, the tiger stripe kind of thing. It's a blonde wood, so it looks maple-ish. I'm going to use a maple that's an American maple because I happen to have it, and I've been carrying it around for years. Now, Initially, I bought this because I saw it and I liked the flame on it. It's not a perfect wood for instrument making. It's not vertically cut. The grain is not vertical. It's actually, I guess you would call it, it's not really slabbed, although there's a section of it that is really the opposite of what I want, right? So this is the wood that I've selected. I had a 6 foot tall board, 7 foot tall board of it. It does have a nice flame, although I don't know that it shows on this particular angle here. And I've used similar wood to this in the past, and it's worked out okay. In fact, I've used basically this same wood for an 8-string archtop that I built several years ago, and this should work fine. I have arranged this to where the knots, there are a couple knots here, do not impinge on the outline of the instrument, and so that's why it was joined the way it is. Now this is not book matched, but it is from the same board, and it's flipped around to where the flames kind of book match. Okay, it's the flaming that book matches, and it would be fine. It will be fine. There actually are violins that are made with slab cut wood from the golden age of violin making, so I don't feel too bad about it. But it is something that, you know, if I was going to be selling this to someone, and I might, I would have to warn them about the fact that they need to be careful about humidity change. All right, so that's the back. Now for the top, I had a choice. The last 2 archtops I made, one had a redwood top. This is from the same piece of redwood that was made of. It's not quite large enough to cover, so I would have to take a section of this, glue it onto the side here in order to get the full size of this. And this is a beautifully quarter sawn, very tight grain wood, and it made a fine guitar years ago when I made that. But I don't really want that large a section here. I mean, I don't mind gluing on a piece that's a 1/4 inch or so on the outside. It's going to be covered mostly by binding anyway. But this is more like 1 inch, and I don't want to do that. So I'm not doing that. I also had some yellow cedar. The previous archtop I made is a yellow cedar top, and it looks beautiful. I mean, it's almost the same color as the back and side wood on the Joe Pass, but I don't like the cut of the piece that I was looking at. It's 2 inches thick. It's plenty thick to make an archtop out of, and the grain is beautiful. It's tight, but it's not quite quartered enough for me. So I decided against that particular piece of wood. The other piece of wood that I had is this. You can see a few spots here from where it was contacted by the yellow cedar. That of course will be cut away, and it won't have the spots. This is a piece of Sitka spruce that I bought back in 1977, direct from the distributor in Washington State. And it's beautifully 1/4 sawn, it's tight grained, it's really ideal if you like Sitka spruce, and it'll be fine. So that was my selection there. This is thick enough to get the arch that would match the Joe Pass arch, which is not as high as the D'Angelico, for example. So this is taken directly from the Joe Pass guitar. This is from the Benedetto book. They're a little bit different size. The Joe Pass F-hole, if we want to call it that, is smaller than the Benedetto F-hole. That should give it a little bit bassier tone, assuming that the top actually is free to vibrate, which it's not when it's the real Joe Pass instrument, the Epiphone. So I'm going to go with that because that's what we're copying. Okay. This is the piece of wood I'll be using for the sides. Obviously it's not cut down yet. I'm not sure what that discoloration is, but that won't be on it. So this is about the same as the backwood. Not really well quarter sawn, but has a beautiful grain to it in terms of the flame. So the neck is coming off of the same piece of wood that the back came off of. That will be set on end, so it will be quarter sawn in terms of vertically to the fretboard. The fretboard is actually going to be a piece of mun ebony. Mun ebony is brown as opposed to black. It looks a little bit more like Brazilian rosewood, but it's not a rosewood, it's a true ebony. And this will be inlaid with whatever it is I decide to inlay into it. If anything, we'll see. So there we have the basic layout for the instrument. Now, that's just the materials. That has nothing to do with what I want it to sound like or anything like that. We can discuss that in an upcoming video. Really more in line with when it's being carved. So we can deal with that when that arises. Now, let me just mention what I was going to talk about, what things that are going on with me at this point. I live in a small town in eastern Washington. It's actually one of the larger towns in eastern Washington. Has the University of Washington State in it. It's called Pullman. It's a place where my father taught when I was a kid, and then we moved away a long time ago when I was like in third grade. And I came back here to retire. Well, I'm not really retired, but I'm sort of retired. And something happened during the pandemic which was disturbing, and that is that both of the music stores in this area closed down. The music store in Moscow, which is about 9 miles away, 7 miles away, closed down. And in fact, the building has been torn down at this point. So it's gone. And the local music store here in Pullman closed down for totally different reasons that I won't go into. But nonetheless, that leaves two major university towns without a music store. And even though I, at my advanced age, do not want to try to run a music store, I've decided that since it's the 50th anniversary of me starting to build guitars, which was in 1974, I would, for at least 6 months of the following year, the coming year, 2024, will open up a showroom to showcase my guitars, maybe sell a few strings, a few accessories for guitars, and at least have a quasi-music store appearance in the area for a few months at least, and maybe be able to talk to enough people to get something going so that there is a music store that is representative for these two towns and two universities. So I'll probably mention that a few times off and on. I have purchased some cabinets. I have a display cabinet that I got already a year or two ago, and we'll be moving in, opening up on the 1st of January, 2nd of January. So I'll fill you in on that later. If any of you are local, you can come by, say hi, talk about guitar making, guitar playing, acoustic instruments. Thanks. Talk to you later.